It's time to change the conversation about mental health.
When you know something is wrong.
When you feel alone.
When you can't explain what hurts.
When every day is a struggle.
When you can't ask for help.
When your friend or family member seems fine on the outside.
But hurts on the inside.
Sometimes I feel as though I'm the only one that feels. But I know that's not true.
We can change.
We can change.
We can change.
We can make a difference.
There's power in our difference.
We can support each other.
We can fight stigma.
We say it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay to have a mental health condition.
We all want to feel heard.
To find hope.
And to live in a world without stigma.
Without discrimination.
And we are a force to be reckoned with.
I am not what happened to me.
I am how I overcame it.
Stand with us.
And discrimination in mental health.
You can see the person, not the condition.
You can build understanding.
You can play your part.
The conversation changes with me.
With me.
With me.
We are well-beings.
We are all well-beings.
Hello, and thank you for joining us as Detroit Public TV presents a discussion of a crucial topic, the mental health and well-being of our youth and young adults. Today's live virtual event is part of the National PBS Well-Beings Tour on Youth Mental Health. It was created by WETA, the public media station based in Washington, D.C., in partnership with member stations across the country, such as Detroit Public TV. Our thanks to the many national and local partners who have made this important forum possible. The Well-Beings Project is a multi-year campaign to address critical health needs in America, beginning with the Youth Mental Health Project, engaging the voices of young people to create a national conversation, raise awareness, reduce stigma and discrimination, and encourage compassion. We very much hope you'll join the conversation today by asking questions and offering your comments on the Well-Beings Facebook or YouTube page. And we ask that you take the event survey at wellbeings.org/DPTV. Your insights can help us craft future Well-Beings events. One of our special supporters, along with reporters with the PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Lab, are here now to share more about the Well-Beings campaign and its important mission to demystify and destigmatize our physical and mental health through storytelling.
WETA, with a coalition of partners, welcomes you to the Well-Beings Youth Mental Health Project. Hi, I'm Bill Pullman, and I'm honored to be with you as we launch this national campaign from public media. Well-Beings is a groundbreaking project at a very important point in time. Mental illness disproportionately affects our young people and the most disadvantaged populations among us. The growing mental health movement has set the stage for dramatic change, to raise awareness, to reduce stigma, to focus on prevention and early intervention, and the promise of more research for new treatments. Together, we can bring mental illness and discrimination out of the shadows, and it's not a day too soon. So thank you for being here today.
Welcome to the Well-Beings Detroit, Michigan. As a part of the National Well-Beings Tour, Detroit Public TV is teaming up with WETA, Kevin Song, and other local organizations today for virtual conversation addressing the issue of student mental health and suicide. Our hope is that adults can really hear what students have to say about anxiety, depression, mental health, or the pain their friends and peers are feeling. And then we can really explore the question, what do students want to hear from teachers, parents, and other adults in their lives? Well-Beings, along with public media, will produce a variety of content through the multi-year campaign. Here are some of my fellow PBS NewsHour student reporters from around the country to tell you more about it.
The signature documentary series in the Well-Beings campaign is Ken Burns Presents, Hiding in Plain Sight, Our Mental Health Crisis. Produced and directed by Ewers Brothers Productions and written by David Blistein, the film will explore, through lived experiences, the youth mental health crisis in our country. Currently in production, this 4-hour documentary film is slated to air on PBS stations in spring 2022.
Wellbeings.org and hashtag Wellbeings will be adding content every week over the 2 years, including Brave Teens, where teen storytellers go on the record about their mental health journeys.
And Brave High, a digital feature-length documentary where students in high school productions share their mental health stories through spoken word, music, and dance without fear, shame, or stigma.
Out of the Dark, a short-form digital series that will profile lives transformed by mental health challenges, highlighting the power of difference.
PBS NewsHour's student reporting labs engage high school journalism students as correspondents that report on youth mental health from more than 150 high schools across 46 states.
And let me say hello and welcome to every one of you. I'm Cynthia Canty for Detroit Public Television, and I'm speaking to you from the Riley Broadcast Center at Detroit Public TV. Rates of suicide continue to rise across the demographic spectrum and certainly among our school-age young people. For years, suicide and mental health issues were subjects to be avoided, hidden behind a veil of stigma or fear. Well, now, hopefully, we know differently. But in our conversations, are we really hearing what students are saying about anxiety, depression, mental health, or pain their friends and peers are feeling? What do they want from teachers, parents, and others in their lives? As part of the National Wellbeings Tour, Detroit Public TV is teaming with Kevin Song and other local organizations to create this virtual conversation addressing vital, often life-saving issues. Tonight, we're going to listen to a diverse group of students who will talk about their lives, their feelings, their concerns. And we will leave time for your questions at the end of the program. Please feel free to join in with questions and comments and be part of the discussion at the Wellbeing's Facebook or YouTube page. So let's begin by meeting our panel. First, we welcome Nancy Buell from the Macomb Intermediate School District and from Kevin's Song. Nancy, would you tell us a little about the work you do in the area of mental health and suicide prevention?
Sure. I work at the Intermediate School District, like you had said, and my role there is to be in service and support to the 21 districts in Macomb County and actually beyond in the areas of mental health. So one of the big things that I do is I'll work with the counselors, provide training, consultation, and if there is a tragedy or a crisis situation, I will go in and support the staff and the young people who are significantly impacted by that crisis.
And I know you really do work on this 24/7. This is such a labor of love and intense passion for you, and we're very lucky to have you with us tonight. And now we meet a group of high school students who represent 4 counties in Southeast Michigan. We start with Sophia McGee, who's a junior at Utica High School in Macomb County. Sophia, tell us, why did you think it was important for you to be with us as part of this discussion?
Good evening. So in my community, I definitely take on the role of being of service to all the people that I can in whatever way I can. And I've felt as I've gotten older that a major area that I can help is with mental health. There's such an emphasis on physical health and spiritual involvement, yet many people forget or brush aside the importance of mental health and how universal it is, that none of us can turn away from it, and how it will impact us. And I think that it's really important that I have gotten, and I am so grateful to have gotten the opportunity to become a voice for the mental health struggle that teens are having, thanks to my school and also thanks to previous opportunities that I've had.
And from Oakland County, we get to say hello to Bailey Parker. Bailey is a junior at Bloomfield Hills High School. So Bailey, why do you think mental health is such an essential topic?
Well, I've seen mental health issues firsthand in social media, in school, and just my community in general. And this opportunity, this event is a great way to spread awareness. And I know it can be an uncomfortable topic for us, but it's great to just hear other perspectives as well.
Very true. And now we go to Washtenaw County and we welcome Eli Herman. He's a junior at Community High in Ann Arbor, who will, of course, be graduating early. Eli, why does mental health and wellness matter so much that you're taking time to be with us?
Well, thank you for having me tonight. I am very passionate about this topic. It is something that I do not only in my personal life, but also professionally. I work for the Michigan Organization on Adolescent Sexual Health, and I am an advocate for transgender youth. I am very involved in a lot of mental health things that can help transgender youth and LGBT youth in Southeast Michigan. And I love sharing my insights from my own struggles with mental health.
Wonderful. We're glad we have you. And we also want to welcome from Wayne County, Frank Jermaine Blackman Jr. He's a senior at the University of Detroit Jesuit High School in Detroit. Frank, why are you willing to be here to share your views and thoughts with us?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me. So my journey with mental health began in 2019. I was faced with 3 students who died by suicide at my school personally. So I know the effects that mental health can have on not only students, but teachers and parents and faculty and staff members as well. So I know how detrimental and important mental health education is. And so that's why I try to use my voice to assist in any way possible.
Well, we want to thank you all for being with us tonight. We have a lot to cover. As a community, there is so much that we need to learn about the mental health challenges and the risk of suicide among our young people. So the goal of this program is to provide a platform for the voices and views of these students and for us to listen. So I want to ask each of you, what does living a stronger, more mentally healthy life mean to you? What would that look and feel like? Eli, what do you think?
Well, that is definitely an interesting question because it can be really hard to see what a mentally healthy life can be like when you experience a lot of mental health problems. I myself struggle a lot with depression and anxiety, along with dysphoria and things like that, that make it really hard for me to envision what my future can be like without suffering from these problems. In my healthier times, I know that being mentally healthy means that I have energy. I feel like I can accomplish things. I am positive and confident, and I feel like nothing can hold me back.
I think that my definition of mentally healthy refers to more a resiliency because, in my opinion, mental health will come as an ebb and a flow. There will be highs, there will be lows, and that just comes with the challenges that life will throw at us. And I think the most important thing about being mentally strong is being able to build yourself back up when the hard times come and knowing that resources are there for you. There are people around who love and support you and will help you through the tough times so that you can once again reach a healthy state of mind.
My definition of being mentally stable basically is just coping, coping in a great way, communicating with others, and not only yourself, just others around you as well.
For me personally, I think that the best way to, besides what everybody else has been saying, but the best way to really be mentally healthy is just have balance in your life and find things that, make you happy. Things that you wake up and have motivation to do every day. So I think that's the best way to kind of be mentally healthy.
And it's such a good way to be able to live your life. And yet we look at the statistics, the Centers for Disease Control tell us that suicide is the leading cause of death among teens aged 14 to 18 after unintentional injuries. And then if you look at the years from 2009 to 2018, suicide rates in that age group of 14 to 18-year-olds, it jumped by nearly 62%. Why do you think that is? What are you seeing? Frank, why don't you try that one?
Yeah, for sure. For me, I think that, as rates continue to rise, I think social media plays a big piece of that, technology in general. We're exposed to so much as teens and as young adults, and we have so many more tougher decisions to make than previous generations. And, this generation is a lot more, contains a lot more leadership in general. And I think that, social media has a big effect on teens as a whole. So I think that's a big issue right now.
I would absolutely like to echo what Frank said. I completely agree that I think social media has shown so easily accessible what unrealistic standards look like. And I think that those have translated also to academics and social lives and many other fields. And so I think that that becomes very detrimental to our health when we try to make that what we're reaching for and trying to conform to what someone else's ideal is and not necessarily our own. And I think also, in addition to that, it's that there are a lot of pressures on us that there once were not. And I think there is a tension between what once was the normal and what is now. And so I think now we are looking for a lot more acceptance in our society than earlier generations may have allowed. And so I think that that does cause some struggle between past and present generations.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with both of those. I think that for every person, it's different what really affects them the most and what contributes to their poorer mental health the most. I think there is a lot of genetics that goes into it, a lot of brain chemistry, social things, school things. But I think one of the biggest things that I see for me personally and with my friends is that there is a lot of pressure that is put, especially on students, upperclassmen in high school, that I don't believe needs to be put there. There's a lot of pressure on deciding college, taking very stressful standardized tests, a lot of different, very high stress, as I've said, situations that we're being put into every few weeks. And it gets to a point where people just kind of get tired of being so stressed out, and their more positive habits start to crumble away, in my opinion.
And I think it's very poignant what each one of you have said here relative to suicidality and the increase in what we're seeing out there. For many years, I have worked in this field, and suicide had always been the third leading cause of death in youth, your age. And now it is one of the leading causes of death, between second and now, I think, in Michigan, first in that age group. What you have mentioned here is critical when you look at suicide theory, but pain, pressure, problems, and I heard all of you kind of speak to that. We heard about expectations that may be either realistic or unrealistic. Along with this is the whole topic of mental well-being, which we touched on a little bit in the beginning. But I wanted to ask all of you, what are you seeing in your schools, in your communities, in yourselves or your peers related to mental health? What challenges, what struggles, what are you seeing specific to that?
For me, I see.
Sorry, Frank, and then Bailey.
Yeah, for me personally, I see a lack of, motivation amongst students, especially now with COVID. I think that, the impact that COVID has had on the world, especially kids, they're just so lost in so much false news coming in from the media, and kids don't really have a sense of direction in school. And so it's a lack of motivation, and staring at a screen for 8 hours a day is not really ideal. It's not really a healthy learning environment for students to begin with. So I think that plays a big role in what students are going through in schools today.
I've been seeing in school, people are putting up a mask as if they're okay and not feeling free to communicate with themselves, or if they do communicate, that their response is going to be dismissed, or they just won't receive the solution that they need.
I've seen quite a bit of good things and bad things, I think. all pertaining to mental health. The good things are that I have had so many more of my friends talking to me about their own mental health and their struggles. And I've had friends who have gone into therapy in the beginning of the pandemic and are enjoying it, things that they had never considered doing before. But on the more negative side of things, I know that many of my classmates experienced tiredness really of the Zoom school and just staying in the same place over and over again every single day, staying in your house. For people that don't have jobs, I know people who haven't truly seen people like their friends or anyone for months. And that can be really, really difficult on your mental health, even if you don't have a pre-existing condition. So, yeah.
I totally agree what everyone has said so far. And I think that emotional burnout has been so prevalent within our communities as a result of the pandemic and so much change that we've had to keep up with just because of the environment that we're in right now. And I think what furthers this issue is that it doesn't just exist within teens, but it's also through adults and young children. And so it makes it hard to find a support system that's not impacted by the difficulties of the pandemic. In addition to that, in the general population, I have noticed an increase in anxiety, depression, and, as well as substance abuse that needs to be addressed and should not be normalized as something that can just be brushed under the rug, because it's not, and it will have lasting consequences if it is not addressed.
I'm just going to jump in here really quickly because everything you have said, it led me to wonder about this. I hear as I go around that there's still sort of this stigma in the adult area where they may feel hesitant to talk about these really important and heavy topics with youth. But then when I talk to the youth, they're more than willing. In fact, it sounds like all of you know that it is time to really talk about this, and you're not afraid to do that. How do we help the adults not be afraid to talk about it like you guys are so open doing?
Well, in my school for You Matter Week, which is all about a week all about mental health, dedicated to mental health, we've done TED Talks, which are the faculty saying things that that has happened like during the span of their life. So anything that from situations from a child trauma or things that have happened now, and that really makes a connection towards the student and administration because they feel like they're not the only one going through this and they have that type of connection. So we're all in this, basically. We all face this.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, in previous generations, like suicide and depression weren't really words that were used as often as they should have been. And I think it was a lot of that going on back then. They just didn't know that that was what it was. And so now that we have more information about it, and now that we know that it exists in the world and that kids are going through it, I think that more kids are able to speak out against it. And we're able to raise more awareness about this issue because it's very important.
I think that there are, again, a lot of different reasons why adults have trouble speaking about this. I think in a way that there's a little bit of internalized kind of fear with talking about it. I know a lot of adults who experience mental illness, their symptoms developed when they were adolescents around our age. And if you spend your entire life kind of hiding away your mental illness, it comes to a point where when you have children and you see your children experiencing mental illness and you your whole life have hid it, you feel like it's not a thing that really is that bad. It's really not as bad as, these teenagers are describing. I've heard some adults say, which, there's a lot of work that has to go into undoing that sort of thinking. So it's definitely a lot, I feel.
As Bailey had mentioned, my school also participated in a You Matter Week, and we had teacher TED Talks as well. There was such positive feedback as a result of them. But I think an important note on that is that people's mental health struggles are very private, And if they feel that they would like to keep them to themselves, that is totally okay and that is their prerogative. However, I think that in order to open the conversation, that doesn't necessarily have to just start with mental illness or a mental health struggle. It can also just talk about strength and resources to stay in a great frame of mind. But I do think no matter what the conversation is, it takes courage. And although we tend to think that adults are the ones that have the bravery, sometimes it takes a child to open the door and not be afraid. And so I think that that's an important note to say that I might not be talking about it. Maybe I am a little afraid, and that's okay, but I'm going to try anyway.
You guys are offering such good insights, and we want to thank you for that. We're going to take a moment now to talk about Kevin's Song. You've heard us mention Kevin's Song. It's a Michigan-based organization created to prevent suicide, empower communities, and offer hope and healing to survivors. This group's created a powerful documentary called Singing Kevin's Song. Let's stop now and take a moment and watch a short segment in which Fritz and JoJo Klingler of Oakland County offer some moving thoughts on their son, Nicholas, who took his own life when he was just 17.
He was a smart kid. He had lots of friends. He was a good student. He had a great sense of humor. He had a lot of things that helped him hide this condition that he had. And he was good at it. He was good at hiding it.
We went through a crisis with our son, and we had a certain number of days to try and get him help, and it was a struggle to get that help. It was a struggle to get into a psychiatrist. It was a struggle to get good advice. You know, we had doctors telling us that, you know, we signed a contract with Nick. He's going to be okay. He signed that he wasn't going to hurt himself.
A contract that you're going to sign with a person who's, by definition, mentally ill. If they're going to start talking about taking their own life, you're going to have them sign a contract and expect that they're going to honor that contract? They're going over a waterfall. We got bad advice. We were told, don't hospitalize him. That'll just be traumatic. That's what we were told. We had 10 days to respond after we learned that he had depression. We had 10 days before he took his life.
We need to validate that people feel this way. We need to talk about it and bring it out in the open so then it can be addressed. That is what I wish Nick would have done. He suffered from depression. I think looking back now, we can look back and see he had it for a long time. I wonder if he could have talked about it and had some help figuring it out. I really do think things would be different.
This is the second leading cause of death among young people, and it would seem that we want to address it more effectively than we are.
The first big hurdle that we need to get over is talking about it and addressing the stigma to it, because I think there's a lot more people that are affected by this than the numbers reflect.
And let's just say this again. If you or someone you know is in suicidal crisis or emotional distress, someone is there. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a national network of local crisis centers providing free and confidential emotional support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So remember that number you're seeing on the screen. There it is. You are not alone. Now let's turn back to our students. You've all been sharing some of the issues and struggles that you're seeing in your lives, among the lives of your friends and classmates. And we're wondering, how are these issues playing out at school or at home? What are you hearing from your friends, and what do we need to know? Eli, do you mind if we start with you? I'm wondering how the stresses and anxiety and challenges impact your life and the lives of the people in your circle of friends?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest problems is that there is a lack of compassion, flexibility, understanding, and patience in teachers. And I would say also in adults like parents and bosses, I might even say, just with specifically depression and my own depression, when it gets bad to the point where I can't complete schoolwork and I can't go to school. And when I get in that headspace and then I have teachers emailing me going, you have this due, you have this due, this is late. And I'm just saying, give me one more week, please, you know? Um, and they're just a little bit hesitant because they're like, oh, you're just skipping, you're just out, you're just, um, it can get really difficult. And I understand that there is some level of understanding and compassion coming from teachers, but I believe virtually it can be really difficult for them to fully understand the scope of problems and fully know how to deal with that in in an okay way.
As Eli mentions, it can be like really tough for administration to realize that kids are going through any issues that they might have at home. Since the pandemic, it's 10 times harder. But for a start, I think teachers should perhaps go through a workshop that teaches them signs that students have. And personally, it's been a very big help if a teacher makes that one-on-one connection with me. So I feel free to talk to them about any homework that I'm not completing or any projects coming up.
Yeah, I agree with Bailey and Eli. Really, I think that the more we have these educational programs in schools and have people willing to discuss and open up, I think the more effective we'll be in helping students. I also think that teachers go through things just as much as students do, and so I think there needs to be a holistic approach to approaching this issue, and that everybody needs to get treatment and help and understanding about this important topic.
I think that as far as mental health struggles go, in my peers, I've seen that the reaches of these struggles have no end, that they will reach into every sphere because your mind is carried with you wherever you go in every endeavor that you pursue. And I think that not only is there a problem with the understanding between students and teachers, but I also think that there is a lack of understanding between peers and with each other. And I think that this mainly stems from the fact that our beliefs originally come from our families. And so if our families don't have the best take on mental health and being open and accepting of other people's struggles, that might be reflected in the students' beliefs when they grow up and interact with other people outside of the home. And so I think that that is very important to not forget that you are going to be interacting with your peers and they might confide in you. And it is important to be supportive. But as we talk about at my school, it's not your burden to carry. So it is important to tell a trusted adult, but it's also very important to be compassionate.
I have a couple of thoughts here. And Frank, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. And as an adult here in the discussion, I wanted to echo what Frank said, that the adults in that building, or virtually, but the adult in your life right now also have their struggles, also have their pressures, and pressures in the education world and in their own stressors in their lives. And sometimes it is hard to sort of step away and make sure that you're taking care of yourself. We mentioned in the beginning about the importance of practicing well-being. So that's very real. And it sounds like you're able to see that. Each one of you kind of mentioned that you recognize that adults are there and sometimes they're not doing their best. Just to say, sometimes we have our stuff too. But the important thing is that we open up our minds and hearts to hear that every human being has a story. And if we're willing to listen to what that story is, everybody's going to be better off for it. And then I just had a question for you, because I've noticed over the years when I was a youngster, and if my friend got grounded, let's say, I wouldn't hesitate to say, "What happened?" And now, as I participate in dialogue days with youth for the last several years, youth are saying, well, if they wanted me to know, they would tell me. And so I'm hearing that they don't really, that you are you asking your friends information about their mental health or about what's happening in their life? Or do you see that some of your peers are saying, well, if they want me to know, they'll tell me, and if they don't, it's none of my business? And I think that kind of speaks, Sophia, I want to respect people's privacy. Like you had said, if they don't want to share that, they shouldn't be pressured to share that. But what is the balance do you see, or do you even see that your friends are not really speaking up, and you're hesitant to actually ask how they're doing?
For me, I think that with my friends, I don't wait for them to necessarily talk to me about a struggle that they're having, even though, as I had mentioned before, if they do feel that they want to keep it to themselves, it is well within their rights to do so. However, I do find myself asking, "How are you doing?" And I'm not saying, "How are you? Oh, good. Have a nice day." It's more like, "How are you doing? Is there something that I can help you with? Do you need some support? Do you need a good laugh? Or is there something that I can actually help you get in touch with so that you can get better?" And I think that this dialogue is very important. And I think that not everyone is going to be in a good place to open up, but maybe they need someone to reach out to them in order to feel safe enough to open up. So I do think that conversation is very important.
Yeah, conversation is very important, and I think that's the first step to really destigmatizing mental health, not only in schools but everywhere. Really, I think, especially me, like I go to an all boys high school in Detroit, and it's extremely difficult for males to open up in general because we want to have this ego and this poise that we have it all together. But in reality, men struggle just as much as anybody else, and teachers, like I said earlier, struggle just as much as anybody else. So I think, I have conversations with my friends every day, asking them if they're okay now that we've experienced the effects of mental health. And so I think conversation is very important to approaching this issue.
Personally, if I talk to my friends, I don't think they'll be as more communicative usually, just to brush it. I think they'll just brush it off. I'm doing well, but I think it's more important to realize key factors. So if I go from talking to a friend every single day and we're not talking as much, or they just tend to pull away from me, um, then then I realize that something's wrong. But I don't think that I don't think they would be comfortable asking me straight or telling me straightforward that they have a problem. I think it's kind of my job to realize that they have an issue firsthand.
Yeah, I agree with what all of you have said. And I think it's really important to highlight that there is a lot of like secrecy and fear of judgment that comes along with mental health disorders. And I am also a person who I always ask, how are you? How are you feeling or whatever? And if if there's obviously something wrong and somebody still isn't speaking to me about it, even after I've asked, I try not to push a little bit too much, because sometimes the harder you push, the more likely it is for your friend to just shut you out and not want anything to do with you anymore. So it's really sometimes a gentle approach. And if it gets extremely worrisome, of course, reach out to a trusted adult or call a hotline or something of the sort.
I think you said it spot on. It is a delicate dance between pushing and also letting someone be and feel okay with where they are and working through it. I think that we all need to recognize that we all go through different struggles. And just as Bailey said, we will notice different things that happen with our friends. And I think that there is secrecy that comes with it. But I think that with that, it is important to be there for people no matter what in other ways, and not just saying that, how is your mental health doing, in more gentle ways, as Eli said, being there for them in other areas of their life in more tangible ways, like supporting them or asking how their family's doing or going to a game or something like that to show, I'm your friend, I'm here for you no matter what. And if you are struggling with something, I will still be here for you.
We always hear that word stigma used in talking about mental health issues, and I'm certainly getting a sense that that is the case with adults who have, I think you elegantly put it, that they've been stuffing things that they've been going through away and don't want to talk about that. Is that stigma present amongst your circle of friends? I mean, is it a matter of, it's my business, I'll take care of it, or is there a stigma really in talking?
I believe there is a stigma, especially with going to therapy and really expressing your problems to a professional, that if someone like Eli, I believe, said secrecy, if my friends find out I'm going to someone that there's something wrong with me, and in reality, we're all going through some type of issue, big or small.
Yeah, in my personal friend group, there isn't very much hiding just because a lot of my friends I've known for more than 8 years, like people I've known since elementary school. So we basically did a lot of growing up, coming out, my personal transition and everybody's stuff is just, we've all been through it together. But as more people have come into our friend group, like in high school, there's definitely been certain individuals who are more hesitant. But I think that the longer that you're in a supportive environment, like a friend group who is more open about mental health, the more willing you're to share. So I know people who were completely closed off when I met them years ago in the 9th grade and now are fully open and are enjoying life and know when it's okay to reach out and know when they should be reaching out to a therapist instead of a friend and things like that. So I think that there definitely is stigma, and you just have to find the right people that kind of help you break that cycle.
And I'm wondering about, you're all mentioning a friend group. What would you say to, so there are people who would believe that they don't have a whole lot of friends, that they still don't find the words, they don't have the words to say to somebody who even might be friendly to them, but for some reason with their own mental health struggles, depression or anxiety or problems that they're having, they may believe that they don't have the friends like it sounds like you all have, and so they don't say anything. What do you see that? Do you see like youth in your school who are really quiet or sort of marginalized or out on the outskirts and don't really have anybody to talk to? Frank?
Yeah, I definitely see this. Our school is not really cliquey to the point where it's like everybody kind of communicates with one group of friends. But I will say that there is a lot of quiet kids and reserved kids that don't really have the opportunities to speak their mind and say what they want to say whenever they want to say it. And I think counselors and therapists play a big part of that. Having that one-on-one conversation and peer-to-peer discussion is something that a lot of schools should start thinking about implementing, because it really does help the kids that are more quiet and reserved kind of open up, not necessarily to a large group of people, but more to one person. And one person can make a huge difference in somebody's life. So I think that's super important.
Yes, and I think as many of our schools have programs aimed at mental health for and well-being for the students, staff, and communities, I think that becomes extremely important so that the resources are there for people who feel that they need to take advantage of them, or if their parents realize they need to take advantage of them, they are there. And in my school, unlike Frank's, there tend to be groups that become pretty defined. And so I think the way for that to change is for us all to be just kind to each other. And I definitely try to do this at my school. And as I had said before, just a nice hi, how are you? Or going to someone and saying, can I work with you on this project? So that they feel more comfortable with you. So if there was something that they needed someone to open up to, even if you aren't best friends, even if you don't spend time together outside of the school doors, there's still someone there that they feel comfortable with confiding in.
Yeah, I agree with the two of you. I really think that clubs and social groups are a great way to connect with people in your community. And I know that, like, for me, like, I was in middle school a person who would like eat lunch alone every day, and I felt like I had nobody, when really there is a lot of things in the background mentally that are in a way lying to you. Like, my own anxiety was telling me that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't a cool, quote unquote, enough, or anything like that to ever really achieve a good friend group. And now, years later, you know, I know that I am friends with people. And I think that another really good thing, as Sophia mentioned, is just to try for yourself to be nice to everybody. Like, I have a friend who in high school, she made it a point to memorize every single person's name in the entire school and say hello to them when we walked past them in the hallway, which I know is not achievable now with Corona, but like, it's definitely something that can help if there's always just one person that says hi to somebody else. It can be really helpful for somebody.
I've learned to take advantage of social media, and the kids that aren't willing to really speak to people, or they don't have as many friends in school, um, they're willing to talk to you on various types of social media. So from any platform, you could find them basically just with their name, or even if you have their anybody really. So yeah, taking advantage of social media, definitely.
I just wanted to add to what's previously been said. Just for any students out there watching, like, don't allow fear of judgment to prevent yourself from being friends with someone. Kids oftentimes don't talk to the quiet kid or don't talk to, somebody who they think is not cool or something like that. But don't allow yourself to be, don't allow fear of other people's like judgment of you to determine who you're friends with, because you don't know who that person can be in the future and how they can help you. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that, especially my transition to high school last year. I think we sometimes are the makers of the barriers that we put up with other people because we feel that they're higher than us, they're superior to us, but really we're all just people. We're all going through the same struggles, even though we all have unique things that we go through. We're all in the same boat and we're all going through high school. And I think that the fear of being putting yourself out there and being vulnerable will exist, but I think if we just calm down and realize that we're awesome and we can do this and be friends with everyone, because there's no set number. I can only be friends with 5 people. I can only be friends with 10 people. How about we just all be friendly to everyone?
I love the thrust of saying, use some compassion. I am blown away that someone would actually memorize everybody's name and say hi, because otherwise there could be a person going through the whole day and never being spoken to. I just, that's terrific. In just a moment, we're going to watch a scene from another documentary from the group Kevin's Song. This one is We Need to Talk. It takes us to West Bloomfield High School in Oakland County. In just 3 years, this school suffered through the suicides of 4 students and a teacher. And out of that loss and out of that pain came a nationally recognized program called Prepare You. It's designed to help and support mental health and mental wellness in schools. But first, we want to invite you to join in the well-being's conversation with a visit to the virtual story wall.
The We Are Wellbeings story wall is a central part of the wellbeings.org website, social media platform, and the Wellbeings National Tour. We are asking the public of all ages to submit personal reflections, videos, photos, and short stories to offer hope, to foster understanding, to build community, and break down stigma.
What does being well mean to you? What is the one thing you wish people knew about mental health? What is your passion? What's your story?
Video can easily be submitted via social media using the hashtag #wellbeings or emailed to info@wellbeings.org.
Stories can also be submitted by uploading to Dropbox and live at Wellbeings Tour events. The We Are Wellbeings story wall is made possible through generous support provided by Wellbeings Youth Mental Health Project founding corporate sponsor Otska and Wellbeings media partner People.
Detroit Public TV, along with Wellbeings, has created a resource toolkit to help you or someone you care about find mental health resources both nationally and right here in our community. This mental health resource toolkit can be found at wellbeings.org/dptv-resources.
One of the things I had to reflect upon when we had the suicides that occurred is what was my role as a leader. Everyone in the school was very, very depressed about what was going on, and we were struggling. The community was struggling, and people are saying, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I really didn't know what to do. I wasn't trained.
Enter Ryan Beal, a former student and friend of Principal Watson, who started a company called the Live Network to develop a whole new approach to teaching mental health in schools at an age when youth are becoming most susceptible. The name of the program is Prepare You.
The key concept behind Prepare You is that individuals learn through a process. They learn through an experiential process. It's very important that they're getting these tools because they are at a critical intervention point in making lifelong decisions. So there's 15 classes that are intentionally designed to take them through an emotional arc so that by the time they get to 7, 8, 9, the top of the arc, they have built relationships within the group. They've built tools to understand how to process anger, how to challenge their distorted thinking, how to engage.
Anytime you start something new, there's always going to be resistance. In education, there's a strong addiction to certainty. So there was a little uncertainty, which made people a little uncomfortable. We implemented it in 9th grade health because we really wanted our students to have that base. And it was also a natural fit within the health course because there is a component about mental health that is covered in our health curriculum, but not to the extent that it should be covered.
As a freshman using Prepare You, you don't know how to go through high school. You're so used to middle school and how easy it was your 8th grade year that once you get to high school, it hits you like a train. And you get slapped with homework and tests and reading and all of that. And you just get this overwhelming sense of stress. And with Prepare You, it helps you learn how to deal with that.
The program for Prepare You was set up for teachers to have lesson plans for 15 classes. When it comes to some of the material that it looked like was coming down, it was like, am I even qualified to teach it?
Prepare You's components contain a student handbook that every student keeps. It's like their own personal working journal. The teacher gets a teacher manual that guides them, this 5 minutes do this 10 minutes do that. They also have a teacher portal. So within the teacher portal, they have the in-class videos that are played within the classroom, and they have the training videos that's class by class. It teaches them also if they want to dive into more understanding group process, as well as an entire library of content that's constantly updated from leading experts.
There's a lot of students that got a lot out of this, and I think because of individuals talking within our group, the connections that got made are things that we will never be able to actually quantify. We know they're there. Kids would say, I learned something that I'm not alone.
We really can't say this enough. If you or someone you know is in some kind of suicidal crisis or emotional distress, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a national network of local crisis centers offering free, confidential emotional support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So remember, you are not alone. And I'd like to remind you, please submit your questions and comments and be part of our discussion at the Wellbeings Facebook or YouTube page. We'll be taking your questions shortly. But first, let's turn back to our students who represent schools from across Southeast Michigan. And we're moving our conversation to now what? We've explored the pressures and the stresses that kids are feeling and how that affects mental health. Let's talk about solutions in action. First, at school. And Frank, I want to turn to you because I know you founded U of D Jesuits Be Nice chapter. Tell us how it works and what it does.
Yeah, of course. So Be Nice is a mental health / suicide prevention awareness program based out of West Michigan. And they brought their program over to the east side of the state in hopes to, gain more awareness about mental health in general. So me and U of D and 10 other schools across the state have gained new chapters in this program. And so our goal specifically for our chapter is to really educate our students, faculty, staff, parents, counselors, everybody about the importance of mental health. And so we can better approach the way in which we treat our students. So the acronym NICE stands for Notice, Invite, Challenge, and Empower. And so those are the steps that we use to kind of approach cases of mental health.
I'm going to throw it back over to the youth in a minute, but I wanted to just say, with the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 800-273-8255 number, and we're asking and keep reminding that if you're in crisis to please call that number and talk to somebody who's ready and trained and able to talk with you. I need to mention to everybody here that that line will also do third-party calls. So if any one of you out there is concerned about someone that you love or someone that you know that you're worried might have suicidal thinking, you can call that number and you can say that you're worried about that person, and they will call. They will just do a cold call out to that person that you're concerned about. You can keep yourself anonymous, or you can let them know who you are. And I worked those lines for the better part of 30 years, and I have made cold calls out to people because youngsters and adults alike have called me to say that they were worried about their friend or their family member. And I always say it's helpful for me to know who made that call, because then I share that with the person I'm talking to, and I say, Sophia or Bailey or Eli or Frank cared enough about you that they called me, a stranger, to reach out to you. So I just want to emphasize that, because one of my passions is to end suicide. We want zero suicide as a goal, and we need to all work to do that. I just wanted to say, don't forget that you can call that lifeline number if you're worried about someone else and ask them to make that call. And so now, talking about the now what, and you talked about the programs that you have in your schools, what other things do you think that adults could work with youth to do? And I know that some of your schools are already doing that. This past year with COVID, we have gotten creative and we have done a lot of great things. What else do you think adults can be doing to help youth become more healthy and well?
I think that, adults really just have to keep open lines of communication between you and your student or your son or your daughter or whoever. It's important. I know there's a huge gap between previous generations and our generation currently, but to be able to keep that open line of communication at all times is very important to, dealing with kids who struggle with mental health disorders.
I agree with Frank, and I would also like to say that specifically for teachers, I think it's really, really important for you to make sure that you as a person in your classroom or your virtual space is inclusive to every type of person that might be there. Even if you have just one student who may be a marginalized group, someone who may be Black, someone who may be part of the LGBT community, anybody, you have to make sure that your classroom, your space, and yourself are accepting and willing to hear their story and not judge them or stigmatize them or stereotype them in any way. It's extremely important just to make sure that all of your students feel comfortable being around you and in your space, because just a comfortable classroom, just one in an entire school, can really make a difference for a student.
That was a point that was made at a mental health summit that my student mental health committee from Utica High School that we attended, and that could not be more true. I think that teachers are phenomenal at pushing us and challenging us to be our best and make good on all of our potential. But I think that there is a fine line between exacerbating the mental health struggles that someone might have and putting the pressure that is healthy and allows them to shine. So I think that is something that's individual to each student. So I think it's important for teachers to get to know each person. And I say person, not just student. So knowing them and knowing who they are and the struggles they might be facing. And in addition to that, I think as a community and honestly as a world, the perspective of people who struggle with mental health should, instead of being that they're weak, that they have problems, should be that they're strong and that they're warriors every single day.
Frank made a really good point to keep open lines of communication. My school, when COVID first hit and we were all on lockdown, we had Google Forms that are, hey, what have you done this week that was productive or that made your week? Have you been keeping in contact with family or friends? Do you want to set up a Zoom call or Google Meet to contact your counselor? I think that's great. And also what Sophia said was great, that instead of you coming to someone that you have mental health issues, not that you have a problem, but you're courageous enough to even stand out and say that, hey, there's something going on and I don't think that I can figure it out alone. I think that's great.
I want to also kind of broaden this out to talk about the home. And I think it's real fair to say that there are parents who may worry about their teen, their child, but they're afraid to say that word suicide. I don't want to plant ideas in her head or his head. How do you think a parent? What are the do's and don'ts? How should a parent best approach any of you to be able to share concerns? What do you think, Sophia?
Personally, if my mom or my dad or even extended family were worried about me, I would want them to address it right on. And I definitely can agree with that. In my community, for sure, the word suicide is taboo. People don't like to talk about it. People feel uncomfortable when they talk about it. But I think the more we talk about suicide and how it's not a solution and about mental health as a whole, that's when the numbers, as Ms. Buell was talking about, as those numbers will start to go down. So personally, I think as a parent, talking about suicide or suicidal ideation, that is really important because it shows I care about you. I've noticed that something might not be okay, or if they experience a tough situation at school, that a peer might be going through something, talk about it because that shows that you care and that you're astute to what's going on in their life.
Yeah, I agree with Sophia. I also think that, every kid is different. So you can't necessarily approach every kid the same way. For me personally, when I was going through stuff in my school, people used to ask me, Frank, are you thinking about committing suicide or are you thinking about hurting yourself? And for me, I didn't really appreciate that because it's like I don't think that you should approach it that way. But for somebody else, that might work. So you have to be very strategic and know who you're talking to and know your kid or know your student and really, make sure that relationship is intact before approaching that situation, the way you approach it, and make sure you're conscious of how you're, talking to that kid.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. And I think it's really, really, really important for parents to be reaching out to their kids. And it's also important to keep in mind that every kid is different and you know your children best. So if you know that your child is always not going to tell you, if your child has been secretive since they were little and you're trying to come out at them with this big, big thing, it may just be too much for them and they just might say, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And in that situation, you should always go to a professional. But if you know your child and you know that there is something wrong and you know that they might speak to you, to talk to them. And if they tell you that there's something wrong, do not keep it behind closed doors, because I know too many people whose families have tried to hide their struggles and it has ended poorly because you always need somebody to talk to, and it's not always your parents. Kids don't always want to talk to their mom or dad and uncle, grandparents about their personal things because you live with your parents, your uncle, your grandparents. You don't want them to know that about you sometimes when you're seeing them every single day, which is where therapy comes in and where that can really truly help somebody who's struggling. Yeah.
As Eli said, any parent knows their child best. I would think that it's great that if the parent points out that they have stuff going on as well as the student. Students students are often more to confide in people that they know that have problems too, so they're not feeling alone as if they're the only one that has a struggle in their life. So maybe if the parent says, "Hey, at work today or on a Zoom call, I was faced with an issue that I just need to talk about," and it might be more willing for that child to tell their problems as well.
I find it crucial also to note that some students might find the pressures that make their mental health poor coming from home. And so, in that situation, that's why it becomes so important for places like school or an extracurricular activity to have resources that people can find help if they are feeling pressures.
We're starting to get questions from our viewers, and so let's take a couple of these. A very good question from Nancy Cepeda, who wrote to us through Facebook, and her question is: how do we as parents approach our children when we're notified or we are aware that our kids are depressed? Nancy, do you want to kind of lead off with that?
Yeah, because it's something that I wanted to address after Bailey was speaking. It is important for parents to notice, I guess. So the best way to approach your child is with a sense of curiosity. Be curious about them. And just as Frank was saying, that sometimes you don't want to come right out with that question so boldly about suicide. But if you're noticing or you become aware that your child is depressed, to just say, hey, I have noticed this, that, or the other. So I've noticed that, you used to come down out of your room a lot more than you have been lately. Can you tell me what's going on? And if we just approach it that way and see if they're willing to talk with you about it, and if they're not, or if they say everything's just fine, then you may want to honor that for a little bit of time, but then you find a way to get back there and continue to just sort of gently press in. And I say as well, sometimes I think it was Eli who was saying that maybe you don't want to talk to your parents or your uncle. Then a parent could also say, you may not want to talk with me, but it is important that you talk to somebody, because the single strongest protective factor for any one of our youth is having one close relationship with an adult. And primarily that's an adult in the home. And secondarily, because kids spend so much time in school, it's going to be an adult in the school. So somehow we have to let our kids know that we're noticing them. We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. So you can ask your child, and if you become aware of it, if they have said to you, if a school has said your child seems to be depressed, just say, you know what, I've heard some concerning information and I just need to talk with you about it. You ask as many open-ended questions as you possibly can, meaning there's no yes or no that comes out of your child. It has to be a thoughtful answer. And there really is no wrong way to ask whether or not they're having thoughts of suicide. You're concerned about
We have
them.
a very
and
good
you've heard
question.
that people. Go ahead.
We have a good question from Cindy Bolden, who wrote us through Facebook. Teenagers are sometimes a mystery to us grown-ups, and she's wondering, can we kind of talk about the signs that parents and adults should watch out for?
I wonder if the teens can.
Sometimes your child is used to a routine, which could be go to school, go to any type of practice or extracurricular activity, and now they've dropped that activity, or they don't talk to their friends as much, or they aren't hanging out as much, or they used to come down for dinner and now they're saying, "No, mom, I'm not hungry." That should be a sign.
Any other signs, Nancy? Anything that you think really needs to be put out there?
I'm going to see what Frank has to say.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, like they was saying, if they're doing less of something, I think that's a big sign and notice for. If they're not doing as much as they used to, in the past as far as sports. And I know a lot of things are different now that COVID is taking over the world, kind of. But if they're doing less of something, or even if they're doing more of something that they're not usually accustomed to doing, I think that's also a sign that you should look out for.
There could very well be someone your age watching this right now who's bottling up a lot of scary and dark thoughts. And it could be nobody really knows what's behind his or her smile. He's not opening up and she's not sharing those dark, scary thoughts with anyone. I want to ask our students, say something to that young person watching us who thinks he or she is alone. Bailey, why don't you start?
Your family is here for you. Your friends are here for you. Your community, your school is here for you. So any resource that you might think is silly, I think that you should use it. And know you're not alone, because we all have our battles and our struggles that we face. So, and you will be heard when you talk.
As teens, I think we need to hear that now is not forever. And I think that sometimes our role might seem skewed when we're in a certain place in our lives and our perspective is as it always has been, or we're in a new environment where we don't know where to look or where to feel that we belong. And I think the most important advice that I can say is that you are part of something much greater than yourself, and that who you are is a piece of a huge masterpiece that would not be the same without you. And that if you are struggling right now, as I had said before, you will not be struggling forever. But what you are going through now will prove to be a lesson that you will be able to use later in life. And it's not always clear why we have to go through the things that we have to go through, but it's sometimes not our responsibility to know that. Just knowing that there's a bigger plan, that one day we will be better off for having gone through what we have gone through. And we can't use those lessons unless we do the work to try to get better, and unless we stay here to try to live the life that we know we can lead.
Honestly, the best advice I can give is just to try your best every day. When I go through rough times and I feel like I'm not doing enough, I've gone from being highly active, working out every day, to laying in bed every day and telling myself, why am I doing this? This is horrible. But then I remind myself that maybe the only thing I can do on certain days is just lay in bed. And my basic survival is more important than getting up and working out. So I can't beat myself up when I barely have the energy to get out of bed. And some of the best advice I've ever been given by somebody when I was feeling like that was that every morning, is a new opportunity, and waking up in the morning is the best thing that can ever happen to you, because every day when you wake up, you have an opportunity to change your life for the better. So whether it's just getting out of bed or maybe deciding to do something a little bit more, you are still taking steps in the right direction, and you're still fighting your mental health, your depression, your anxiety, anything of the sort.
Yeah, 100%. And I also think that, we all as human, like we all bleed blood, the same color blood, like we all do the same things. We all wake up out of bed the same way every morning. And so just knowing that, everybody's the same in the sense that we all do the same things and we all function the same way, and that nobody's really better than you. And having that mindset going in every day is huge. Also, I would say, you do things that you not necessarily want to do, but you choose what you do every day. So making sure that you're choosing to do things that make you happy is super important. So that's the advice I would give to kids.
And I would just like to say, you matter. You matter. Cindy? That says it all. Christopher Chun Seeley is Program Director, School and Justice Initiatives at American Psychiatric Association Foundation. It's a national partner of Wellbeings. He spoke with PBS NewsHour student reporter Micah Martin from Macomb County about the national program Notice, Talk, Act at School.
Hello and welcome. I'm Micah Martin, a student at the FV Pankow Center in Clinton Township, Michigan. My school is a part of the PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs, or SRL as we like to call it. SRL has partnered with Wellbeings on this important national youth mental health initiative. One of the Wellbeings partners is the American Psychiatric Association Foundation, and I'm here with the Program Director of School and Justice Initiatives for the APA Foundation, Christopher Chun Seeley. The American Psychiatric Association has a program called Notice, Talk, Act at School. Can you tell us a bit about that program?
So the Notice, Talk, Act at School program is a mental health professional development designed for all educational staff members. We currently have our programming focused in middle and high school, and we're set to have an elementary component ready for the fall. And it's right in the program title, but the key framework is Notice, Talk, and Act. We want staff members, when they notice disruptive and withdrawn behaviors, to start a conversation, to talk to them, to show care, concern, empathy, to gather information and to determine what action to take next. So what act to take, and there's always an action. And we do that in kind of 3 parts. We start with an e-learning module, 30 to 40 minutes self-paced. Then we do a classroom portion that's tailored for that individual school. Every school is different when it comes to resources and how they might think about responding to students. So we want to work with them to make sure the framework works. And then we follow up at 3, 6, and 12 months to do assessments, so that we're making sure that the framework is working for the school, but we're also focusing on areas that the staff are still struggling in. So we're creating new resources, new courses to really make sure that Notice, Talk, Act is really implemented across the school staff.
What led the APA Foundation to create this program?
The creation of the program happened when I was in middle school, I believe, sometime back then. So 2002, around then, one of the foundation board members, who was actually a lineman for the Indianapolis Colts, saw gatekeepers or individuals in the community that kind of hold resources, and teachers being one of them, and seeing youth as an opportunity to really get them connected sooner. What we know is, on average right now, it takes 8 to 10 years from the first signs and symptoms to actual connection to care. And that's far too long. And that's really where the program's start was really focused on, is how do we get those students connected to care? And that program was around for quite a while before I came on board and made some tweaks to it, because we always need to be improving and making sure that we're making the impacts we want to do.
What's some advice you can give to parents and teachers about talking to teens about their mental health challenges or suicide, or what they're going through, or what they're too scared to tell someone themselves? Because that's mainly the issue for a lot of high schoolers.
Yeah, I think if I were to tell anybody anything around that, I would say trust your gut, right? Like if you are a parent, a staff member, anybody in a child's life, and you think something is wrong or something is going, your gut tells you that something's not right, trust your gut. Start a conversation, have that conversation, show care, show empathy, don't judge, right? That's something we go through. It's like remove judgment, right? Almost come in as like, be stupid, right? I don't know what's going on. I have no clue what's going on. I am here to help. Tell me what's happening, right? Gather that information and understand that like you're not a mental health, if you're a parent or a teacher and you're not a mental health professional, you don't have that skill set to maybe fully support that staff member or student. So find a social worker, find a psychiatrist, find that expert in your community or that extra support, because you can't do it alone. And that's across the board. That's for students as well who are going through it. You can't go through it alone. As someone who has experienced mental health throughout their entire life, this is something that it takes everybody else, and your friends, your family, your coworkers, and the more that you talk about it, the better it gets, because the more that the people can support you around, those people who understand that when you're going through a tough time, how to lift you up a little bit more, how not to put more pressure on you, right? And that all comes from having those conversations in an open and a caring manner.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chunseely, for talking with me today. Really appreciated it. And I loved hearing about your program.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciated this opportunity to talk to you, to be a part of this Well-Beings initiative. And please feel free to visit us at apafdn.org to learn more about our school-based programs or any of the other areas that the foundation is working in to make a mentally healthy nation for all.
Let's circle back for a quick moment to Sophia, who has a thought on these symptoms or warning signs that parents should watch for. What did you want to add, Sophia?
Just that, as we had talked about and come to the conclusion earlier, that how we want parents to approach us on mental health is also just as different as what parents will see in us. And so I did just want to note that we had talked about how students might close off if they're feeling more alone, or if they're feeling that they're having their own struggles. But I think it's also important to notice that students might also overwork themselves to try to feel that they are not weak and that they do not have something that is setting them apart from others. So I think that as parents and as adults, it's also important to note that children might be working themselves so hard to feel that they have purpose somewhere else if they don't feel that what they are is enough. And so I don't want to forget about that and how that might lead to becoming numb. So being sure to, as Frank had mentioned, involve yourself with things that you're passionate about, such as for all of us, mental health and the conversation on mental health. I think that that is extremely important to feeling that we have worth and a role in society.
On behalf of Detroit Public TV, Kevin Song, and the Well-Beings Tour, let me thank our remarkable panelists for their candor, their wisdom, and their willingness to discuss these crucial issues with us. And I honestly believe your courage will be fostering many conversations in Michigan and really across the nation about what we can do as a people to support the mental health of young people. Please remember to visit the Well-Beings website at wellbeings.org/DPTV-resources. And that's where you can download the free Well-Beings Detroit Mental Health Toolkit. It'll provide local and national support resources. Please also visit the website wellbeings.org/Detroit and give us your feedback on the program by filling out a short survey. Our discussion tonight is being recorded and will soon be available at wellbeings.org, so you can share that around. We have a preview now from the upcoming Ken Burns documentary, Hiding in Plain Sight. It's airing in the spring of 2022. The film looks at the experiences of young people living with mental health conditions, and it focuses on the importance of awareness and a word we heard a lot tonight, compassion. It shines a clear light on what life is like for these young people, as well as the parents, teachers, friends, and healthcare providers in their lives. Let's take a look.
I think there's so many things you can say about mental illness. It comes out of nowhere, and then it just creeps into your body, and you don't know how to deal with it.
It's a strange thing to look back on and think to myself, I really didn't care about anything at that point. Not caring if I wake up.
It became a very frustrating thing whenever I'd look in the mirror and there's nothing wrong with me on the outside. There's absolutely nothing wrong to make sense of that pain.
That moment that nothing else mattered to me, that I just threw myself in front of a moving car.
I told my parents what would happen if I wasn't here.
I still had a whole future that I had planned, it's like I was planning the suicide, but at the same time, I was making plans to go out to the movies with my friends the next week.
It's hard to endure, but it's just, take it one day at a time. And that's kind of how I've been living my life.
It affects my daily life all day, every day.
When I finally did start to think oh, I'm probably an addict, I was like, no, you're just lying to yourself.
I really want to live, and I'm trying to make the effort, and I want to have a good life. Maybe 1, 2 kids, not the white picket fence, but something that's livable, not this. But I want it. And I just want normal and mundane and average. Maybe a trip to Myrtle Beach every summer. I don't care. I'm sick of crazy, chaotic, up and down mess.
There really is light. There really is. I know you're you don't know me. You have no idea of my journey. You have no idea. You're right, I don't. You're right, I don't. But I do know about lots of other kids' journeys. They are very different than yours, I'm sure of that. But what I know is that you're worth it. You have value. You are fighting this fight that you truly have no idea whether you're going to win or not. You're beyond courageous. You're beyond courageous. And you're stronger than you know. So keep the fight. Stay strong in your resolve, because you're worth it.
You are not alone. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a national network of local crisis centers providing free and confidential emotional support to people in suicidal crisis or emotional distress, and they are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is committed to improving crisis services and advancing suicide prevention by empowering individuals, advancing professional best practices, and building awareness. And if you or someone you know needs help, do not be afraid to call and ask for that help. On behalf of Detroit Public TV, Kevin's Song, and the Well-Beings Tour created by WETA, once again, we want to thank our panelists for sharing their insights, their stories. We thank you for watching. And we invite you to visit the website, wellbeings.org/Detroit. Give us your feedback on the program and fill out the short survey. This discussion is being recorded and will soon be available at wellbeings.org. Again, a heartfelt thank you to our panelists, to Nancy, Bailey, Eli, Sophia, and Frank. And thanks to all of you for watching. Please spread the word, share this program, and please remember, you are not alone. Thank you so much.